live from Site B on a rainy Monday morning, living under a red alert flash flood warning. It is I, your groovy guide to all the tabletop role-playing game news, weather, and general internet nonsense on this Monday morning, 8:10 in the morning, the 19th day of February. It's President's Day, so for many of you, it's a 3-day weekend. Isn't it nice that a lovely spring day embraces you on this 3-day weekend? It is pouring rain. Yeah. I'm using my radio voice today. I'm not sure why. I just felt it kind of added to the ambiance of the rain. Just sort of being cool and calm, smooth jazz. It's Monday, which means it's time we have to take out our SEXtent and chart the course to see what stories will stir up the outrage of the tabletop role-playing game community this week. And not surprising, at the top of the hill is Wizards of the Coast. But we've got some other news to address first before we get to that. So let's hold on over to our friends at ENWorld and see what else is going on in the tabletop role-playing game world besides this. Another story we're following is the rise and fall of everyday heroes who have gone from a year ago releasing the definitive D20 modern day role-playing game and somehow getting their hands on such amazing IPs as Pacific Rim, Kong, Highlander, Escape from New York, The Crow, Universal Soldier, Total Recall, and Rambo. Pacific Rim plus Kong. It's giant robots versus kaiju. And maybe there's Godzilla, which means maybe we have stats for TJ Storm. I wondered if the Crow one also included the short-lived Crow TV show. But as we know, since that time till today, they have undergone a massive just self-implosion from like 600 employees to 10 employees, several of them leaving the company because of the company's ethics. We also know that the Wizards of the Coast finally released the dates for the D&D stuff, including the Vecna book and the making of the originals Dungeons & Dragons book, of which we will speak of later, as well as some other stuff. So we finally know that maybe the D&D stuff will be finally out sometime around September. Maybe. For strange reasons that make no absolute sense, though, we're not getting the new Monster Manual to February of next year, which makes zero sense. I'm sorry, that makes zero sense. That is of the three books, that is the easiest to make. Okay? It's the reason why the Monster Manual has come out usually first in the past when transitions from one edition to the next. Because really, when making the Monster Manual, all you have to do is cut and paste. Okay, I've got 10 years worth of monsters that we've already made from 2014 to today. They're all stored in the Wizards of the Coast computer. All I have to do is find them, list them alphabetically, and then put them in this book. Maybe I have to change some artwork. I don't know. Maybe the stats change a little. I don't know. But really, is a 2014 dragon going to be that much difference than a 2024 dragon? Is the 2014 green slime going to be that much different than the 2024 green slime? Probably. I'm just going to say no. They're not, because the monsters don't really change. Maybe some of the math changes. Maybe some of the insight into the evolution of the monsters changes. Maybe you get better looking artwork. I don't know. But the Monster Manual is the easiest. It should have been the first. That's the one that grabs people's attention and gets them to go, hey, I want to buy this game because it's got these cool looking monsters in it. So that's the easiest. The second easiest is the DM's guide, right? I mean, I'm sorry, but most of the stuff that you're going to see in the DM's guide that's already been written 1,000 times. All they're adding, I think, is one new chapter and 70 new pages of art. Other than that, it's pretty much stuff we've already seen. I mean, there's only so many ways you can write how to run an adventure. There's only so many takes on the random tables. The DM's guide, is mostly fluff with the important stuff about actually, mechanics and stuff like that. That's the second easiest. The third is the player's handbook. That's the hardest because that's the one you have to change the most stuff in. Everything else defaults to those core rules in the player's handbook, right? So it should be Monster Manual first, player's handbook, and then DM's guide because that's also the one that sells the least, weirdly enough. plenty of people have bought the Player's Handbook and even run the game without owning a DM's guide, and that's true throughout the 50 years. So why does the Monster Manual last, and why do we have to wait till next year? Another thing that is bubbled up in the never-ending controversy that is Wizards of the Coast, especially in regarding to Dragonlance, is this book, and specifically, for some reason, the cover of this book, because apparently, well, I mean, people have said this has been edited. You can look at the faces and see that, yeah, this has definitely been edited. I don't know if you want to say this is AI, because this is awful, but if it is AI, it's an AI that's having a laugh. But the main one seems to be this lady and this dragon. And why does this lady in this picture? And why is this dragon in this picture? Because this dragon apparently is a Forgotten Realms dragon. I don't know. Why would there be a dragon in a world called Dragonheart in a book called Dragons of Eternity? And this lady is a blue dragon rider. And there's her blue dragon. And oh no, that's a Forgotten Realms dragon. Now it's a dragon, okay? That's the way that artist chose to portray a dragon. Maybe it looks kind of like the dragon in the Forgotten Realms, but I mean, and well, this lizard exists in South America. This lizard exists in North America. They both kind of look like lizards there, Bob. I really don't see that much of a difference. Yeah, so this is a non-controversy, but people looking for stupid reasons to be upset about a book about dragons. How could that dragon exist in a world where it's all about dragons? And how could you have a dragon rider in a world that's all about dragons? That's not a thing to be upset about, guys. Really. Got the fight. We know that there's some changes coming up in the Adventurers League, the official home base for all things 5e as they transfer from current rules to the new 2024 rules and the evolution of the game out of Forgotten Realms centric into Planescape centric, because Jeremy Crawford would like us to believe that Planescape is now the core centric rules of 5e, and they have always been the core centric rules of 5e. Since 2014, it has always been Planescape. Ignore the past 10 years of the Forgotten Realms. That never happened. It's always been Planescape. And 2024 will be Planescape. And the Adventurers League is embracing that, whether they like it or not, which means they'll probably also have new stuff. We've talked about that before in the changes to the Adventurers League in a previous video. So, yeah. Now, finally, with the announcement of the official final dates of when the official final books might officially be out officially, we have videos regarding the official books. We have two videos. We have the thank you video that has been extremely controversial because of the references or lack thereof to Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. Several individuals have made videos about the hodgepodging whack-a-mole of the names appearing and disappearing, including King Waspinator, who probably made the funniest video about it. I will post a link down below, and his Gary Gygax doesn't exist theory is freaking funny, and sort of just takes a whole potshot look at this ridiculousness. So if you haven't been following this story, earlier this week, in celebration of the 50th anniversary, Wizards of the Coast put up a video with several members of the Wizards of the Coast cast and crew thanking people and thanking the game and thanking the history of the game. At no point in time in the video do they actually mention the creators of the game, specifically Gary Gygax and David Arneson. I'm probably going to pronounce his name. Much less any of the original artists, much less Ed Greenwood, much less the original campaign, much less the 50 years of individuals whose shoulders that they stand on that allows a very unhappy Chris Perkins and a very smug Jeremy Crawford to say thanks D&D and thanks fans. But at no point do they say thank you Gary Gygax and thank you Dave Arneson for creating this game in the first place. A massive outpouring of, hey, what about Gary and Dave's appeared on the site under the video, and then were rapidly scrubbed. They were gone. I made a video about them being gone, and shortly thereafter them being gone, some of them reappeared again. And there were some new ones. And then they went away. as of this morning, as of the last time I checked, which was about 20 minutes ago, so let's say 8:20, when I started planning this video, all the references to people going, hey, where's Gary, where's David? Gone. Why? We don't know. Other than Wizards of the Coast is stupid. And that they don't want to acknowledge the connection to the game. Because remember, in Jeremy Crawford's timeline, D&D did not exist before he created it in 2014. There was no D&D. 5e is all that matters. 5e is the only D&D that has ever existed, according to the warped worldview of Jeremy Crawford. And the rest of Wizards of the Coast seems to have been jumping on this bandwagon since around 2019. And part of that bandwagon are things like the racism, the sexism, the lack of inclusivity, and basically perpetuating the mythology that these individuals who played the game in the past were horrible human beings who, a small group of white people, that was it. Now, then this video came up, and it's called How Dungeons and Dragons Started. I was wrong. I thought this was the guy who was doing the actual book. It's not. This is some other guy. This is not the guy who's writing the book. In fact, this guy's name isn't even mentioned in the book. But apparently he is the guy that they dragged out to talk about this book. And Tanker goes more deeply into this video and who this individual is and who John Peterson is and how they feed into the history of D&D. And for about 30 minutes or so, it's pretty much on the spot correct, at least from this guy's point of view, and why he felt the history book had to be written. As you know, as part of the 50th anniversary, they're coming out with this $100 book that details the history of D&D from 1970 to 1976-ish, and the transition from Gary and Dave and the core, Lake Geneva stuff into the beginnings of what we know. There's this thing about poop here, and I don't want to look at it. So to the beginnings of what we understand D&D today. Hey, I think I have that shirt. Not this one, that one. So, and for the most part, he is on the spot. He is correct. Weirdly enough, he's not the guy who wrote the book, though. John Peterson wrote the book. This guy is somebody else. And then, of course, we have dictating it, we have the ever condescending, smug-looking, where is he? Todd Kendrick. As I recently saw in a comedy, yeah, that's the face of a guy who you would not trust with your children. Look at the smug look on this asshole. I mean, this guy's just like, yeah, I'm a condescending prick. Anyways, the video's fine till about the 34 minute. And then it goes off.
So I was about 10 when the Player's Handbook came out. So we were using rules from Eldritch Wizardry.
Let's see if I can find it.
And the monster manual.
And it's important that this is a historical document. So there are things, it was a different time. So we've had an inclusivity review of all these materials.
Multiple. So let's take a step back here. Let's clarify.
All right. So this is the problem. Because up to that point, it was fine, which is you talking about the history of the game and how this book is going to discuss the history of the game. No opinions, no forced feeding of the current mentality of the Wizards of the Coast, no incorrect facts. But now you inform us the book has been gone through multiple times, the inclusivity sieve. It has been reviewed by the inclusivity editors, which include such luminaries in the field as Connie Chang and Mackenzie Diams and these other idiots who have been playing the game for like a day. And, so we now know that it's been gone through the editing, it's gone through the sieve, and it is once again reinforcing the non-existent truth that the game was never inclusive until 5e. Nobody but a bunch of old white fucks have played D&D until 2014. And anybody who played D&D before 2014 was a bunch of racist, sexist, homophobic, zombie kissing, baby eating, steps on baby chicks, white people who only lived in Lake Geneva. And nobody else was welcome at the game. In fact, if you go back to the very beginning of the game where they had fighting men as the very first class, well, that's because all they understood was war games where there were only men who fought in wars, because history has shown us that throughout the entire history of war, warfare, and war games and miniature war games, it's only ever men. Only ever white men have ever fought in the war. There was no women folk fighting anywhere ever. Amazons? What the fuck are those? Never heard of them. The female warriors of Celtic mythology and history? Nope, never existed. The women who fought in the Revolutionary War? Nope. Women who helped conquer the Old West? Never happened. People of color who have fought in hundreds and hundreds of wars throughout history, including the Civil War? Nope, never happened. It's only ever been white fucks. Every war game that these guys ever played was only games about white people. So therefore, they named it Fighting Men because that's all they knew was men. Never mind that the second class they ever made was magic users. And most of the art throughout the book features both men and women. And the fact that women have been playing the game. In fact, Gary Gygax's daughter helped create the game and came up with the name Dungeons and Dragons. But they don't want you to know that. They have told us at 38 minutes and 31 seconds that the rules have gone through the sieve of the inclusivity board multiple times. The inclusivity board, who is run by people like Kyle Brink, who wants white people to stop playing the game, Mackenzie Dioms and Connie Chang, who hate white people, hate the history of the game, want to continue this narrative that they were never welcome at the game until now, which is totally untrue. Now, as with every time I hear this argument about how the game was not inclusive and people say this bullshit, well, I never felt welcome at a game. I can tell you that in the 50 years that I've played this game, up and down California, in multiple states across the United States and other countries with hundreds of people, never once until recently have I felt unwelcome at a table, and never once have I met somebody who told me they didn't feel welcome at a gaming table. In fact, time and time again, we hear stories about people like me, people like you, who the gaming table was the only place they felt welcome. The 70s, the only place I felt welcome. D&D. The 80s, the only place I really felt welcome until I discovered punk. D&D. The 90s, D&D. Today, not so much. But it's not, it's less inclusive now than it was then. Because, we've got to have gatekeeping. We can't have them at our game. Can't have these old white fucks at our game. Okay, so this is ignorance. Now, I don't know if this guy actually believes this. If this is this individual's actual perception of the history of the game, or if this is the script he is being forced to read to keep his job. And the fact that he's admitting that this history book will not be a history book, it'll be history run through the cheese grater of the Wizards of the Coast inclusivity, wanting to perpetuate the mythology that the game wasn't inclusive. You were not welcome at the D&D table, which is categorically untrue. And more, he wants to reinforce a false history that women didn't play war games, women didn't play Dungeons and Dragons, and women weren't involved in wars. What are the Amazons? Never fucking heard of them. Again, yes. I can say, I can't speak for every individual on the face of the planet and in space throughout the 50 years of the history. Unless this dude has spoken to every single solitary human being who has in any way, shape, or form played any tabletop role-playing game, going all the way back from day one D&D all the way to today, where we have hundreds of thousands of role-playing games. Unless you have gone and spoken to every individual, including the astronauts, because they played D&D on the space station, and asked them, can you prove to me categorically that the game was not inclusive until 2014? You, sir, are a liar. And I will hold that up to anybody. And I am, if I'm wrong, shoot me. I don't know. I mean, you're telling me I was not welcome at the gaming table. The nerdy, disabled, glasses-wearing Jew of questionable sexual orientation was not welcome at the gaming table because only people that fit this thing are the people that were playing D&D. And nobody else was playing D&D like this until 2014, when D&D had to go through the forced inclusivity, because there was no D&D before 2014, right? Gary Gygax didn't invent D&D. There, you know, who's this Gary Gygax guy? I don't know who he is. I think we just have to go to this. Gary Gygax is not real, obviously. There is no history. So if you haven't checked out my friend King Waspinator's video yet about how Gary Gygax doesn't exist and that he is a myth created by people like me, I highly recommend you go over to this video. It's called Gary Gygax Must Die. And it is King Waspinator informing us that Gary Gygax doesn't exist. Never existed. There is no Gary Gygax. There is no game before 2014, right? Because that is the mythology that Wizards of the Coast apparently wants us to follow. And Tanker goes on this one too, but then he gets a little, but whatever. I'm not, you make your own opinion of Tanker's video. I pointed the video down below. My God, it is raining. Stay safe, RPG Grandma and everybody else in California. So that's the news. And I think we can know, but beyond a shadow of a doubt, that is the number one story that is going to be perpetuating the center of conflict in the tabletop role-playing game community. And I'm sure there will be the few people who agree that old D&D needs to have gone through the inclusivity sieve multiple times, that their view of D&D is the right view, and that, you know, oh yeah, I never felt welcome. Never saw that there was a game that embraced my perspective of the world. I mean, I've only been playing for 3 years, but yeah, in those 3 years, I can definitely tell you that not a single person on the planet was playing the way I wanted to play or running a game I felt safe and welcome in. That's utter bullshit. But apparently that is the myth that this individual has to play. So if anybody was holding out hope that the $90 nostalgia reprint of the retro original products history of the game was going to be a reprint of the original products and discussing the history of from the creation to the publication to the fallout without any Wizards of the Coast influence to try and direct it towards this mythology of, you know, the way they want us to think D&D was played back then, that you just thought this was going to be an actual informative history of the game, which also featured the original rules for the few people out there who don't have them. Well, turns out you're wrong. Turns out it is going to go through this editing, and yeah. And this probably also goes to the reason why Wizards of the Coast is erasing any mentions of Gary and Dave in the commentary about the thank you, because we don't want to thank Gary and Dave for the game. We only want to thank the past 10 years for the game. We want to completely forget 4th, 3.5 and 3. That's gone. Anything before Wizards of the Coast took over never happened. Doesn't exist. And if you were playing it, you were a horrible person. Yeah. Once upon a time, my good friend Grim Jim asked me when he was doing his Ask Your DM questions thingy, do I have any advice for Wizards of the Coast? And the advice I have for Wizards of the Coast today was the same advice I had when Jim asked me that question, was the same advice I had for Wizards of the Coast a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And that advice is, Wizards of the Coast, stop. Stop. Just fucking stop. Stop writing, stop talking, stop publishing, stop anything. Just stop. Shut Wizards of the Coast down for 6 months. You don't need to do anything else. Magic's ready to go. We don't need you to make magic. We know D&D 2024 is ready to go. We don't need you to do that. We don't need you to do anything. Shut the fuck up. Stop talking. You're not helping yourself. The only thing that comes out of this is you get free press. The sinister idea that this is all on purpose. That Wizards of the Coast does this because they know of the hundreds of thousands of people who disagree. They're going to get people who go, oh yeah, that's totally right. There's 10 people who do agree. And those 10 people will buy our game. And those are the 10 people that matter. Right? That's right. Right? I mean, that can only make sense is that Wizards of the Coast is playing a negative press campaign because negative heat is still heat. And if we equate it to my, continuing pro wrestling analogy, well, heel merch sells better than face merch. Cody Rhodes might be the face of world, the WWE right now. And his merch might be selling, like hot dogs. But the second Roman Reigns shows up and is one of 4 times a year and gets that crowd booing and hating him consistently, that merch sells more than Cody's because heat merch sells more than face merch. People react more to the bad guy than they do to the good guy, and the bad guy tends to make them more money. So maybe that is what Wizards of the Coast is doing. You will hate us. You will boo us. You will think we are total asshats, but you're paying attention. And if you're paying attention, you're probably spending money, even if it's hate money. I'm going to buy this book just so I can fucking take it apart and tell you how much I hate it, Wizards of the Coast. Well, you still bought the book. You're still talking about us. We can still show our shareholders that people are talking about us. But you have to have the good guy for the bad guy to work. It's not the same. Yes, but the good guys are us. The good guys are the other companies. The good guys are the people going, oh, I agree with you, Wizards of the Coast. I don't know. But just again, I would like to remind you, idiot, who said that, there was just a bunch of white guys and all they knew was white guys and women didn't play and women weren't involved and there were no war games where women, and historically women didn't fight in wars. That's utter inaccurate bullshit. Girls game. They have always game. People of color game. They have always game. Fat people, thin people, red people, blue people, gay people, straight people, trans people. I have played with homeless people at the same table where I played with a millionaire. I played with a porn star. It doesn't matter. D&D said, please just come and play. We don't care. We don't care. It was the one place where everybody was welcome. And now you want us to think, oh no, it wasn't inclusive. OGGM, you never played D&D because D&D wouldn't let people like you play. RPG Grandma, you never played D&D because D&D never would let people like you play. TJ Storm, nope. That 15-year-long Advanced Dungeons and Dragons campaign you ran, never happened. So that's the story. And I've been complaining about it for 30 minutes. I think it's time I shut up because my cat is freaking out because he hates the rain. So please drive safely today because it's raining, and have a better tomorrow. Thank you, Wizards of the Coast, for reminding us you're stupid.